This is Sheryl Aronson, licensed marriage family therapist, on the Road to Your Heart podcast with my co-anchor, Dr. Michael Berlin.
Hello, Sheryl.
Hi, Michael. We're going to continue talking about the 10 keys to successful relationships. But just to review, let's talk about, just list what the 10 keys are. We started with self-love, empathy,
and kindness,
self-awareness,
communication, and
resolving conflicts. We really need to learn how to do that. And we're here to help all of you out there who are interested in being in a healthy, dynamic relationship. Talk about the skills, the self-awareness, the knowledge, the education of what it takes to be in a healthy, dynamic relationship. We're going to have fun, but we're also going to get serious. Okay.
I'm with you on this one.
All right. So we are now talking about the 10 keys to successful relationships. First, Michael, you know why I wrote this song, On the Road to Your Heart? I just thought, what did I or have done with couples to help them have a healthy, dynamic relationship? And this is how I broke it down. And it came out to be 10.
I think it's really important that you concretized it so that people really have a handle and they can actually do it. You know, as opposed to the sort of amorphous, listen more closely, be more open. You go, okay, what does that mean? That you've sort of laid it out almost in a grid. People can understand and actually do it step by step.
Step by step, because it is really a step-by-step process. And I have to just say just a little thing about growth. It takes time to change your habits, your ways of thinking. It just doesn't happen after a few therapy sessions. Give me 6 months to a year because you will see. Now, that might sound like a long time, but it really isn't to see significant, deep change in ourselves.
Somebody once said to me, we were talking about change, you know, the wanting to change people or whatever, and the person said to me, if somebody changes an inch, that's significant. You know, you want to go, what? Just an inch? I think the metaphor is well taken, which is real change is very hard, and it comes slowly. You know, we've spent half a lifetime developing all of these skills and techniques and defenses, and then suddenly someone comes along and says, drop all that and try this, and you're going, you're right. You know what I mean?
Exactly. You know, what I compare it to, because sometimes you have to make metaphors in talking about relationships, I say, well, how did you learn how to play a sport? Did you not practice? Did you not have to go out there day after day, shoot that basketball, swing that bat, and do it again and again? How did you get good at it? Were you good at it after a few months?
You know, a pro will tell you that supposedly you have to do something 10,000 times to really internalize that skill. Well, imagine, you know, practicing, you know, good relationship habits 10,000 times. You think, am I going to live that long, right?
Yes, but we do. And I'm going to tell you, I see significant changes in the couples I work with. And I love it because it happens quietly. It happens underneath the surface because they have been practicing. And then one day they're doing exactly what we've talked about, and they don't even know they're doing it.
If it works the way it's supposed to,
that's how it happens.
That's how, you know, the other piece is, and I think as a therapist, as a teacher, as just a human being, it's almost like you have to have faith in the process, which is, we can have legacy, we can have input, and a person or the couple will be long gone from you, and what they've learned will start to reveal itself. And we, the teacher, have to have faith that that's going to happen. It may not happen in front of us, but we have to believe if we really did our job the right way and they took it in, that somewhere down the road, it'll blossom.
So we're going to get back to listening non-defensively. Oh, I love this one. This is almost impossible to do.
I think what comes to my mind when we say non-defensively, I think we don't want to hurt the other person. We don't want to see ourselves sometimes in a negative light. And so immediately when someone is sort of talking, and again, as you said before, there's one of the songs, It Takes Two to Tango.
Yes.
When a person gives you, quote, feedback, and the feedback feels like this.
Yes.
My instincts is to just hold my hand up and to be defensive and to try to protect myself in that kind of relationship. It really does take two. The person, we had talked about communication. There's a communicator and a listener. And if the person is self-aware and open, it makes it much easier for me to take in the breadth of feedback, the really positive stuff, the stuff that you'd like to see changed, a whole variety of things. It's easier to listen non-defensively than it is to, to just sort of hold your hands up, literally or otherwise, and push back on things.
So I think Michael makes a very good point. When we want to talk to our partners, it's very easy to go, you, and like that. What is very good to do is, again, check in with yourself and say, how am I feeling when this just happened? I felt hurt. I felt sad. I felt angry. If I own how I feel and then just say, you know what? I felt really hurt when you just ignored me when you came in today and just walked right past me. That really hurt my feelings. And I would just like a little kiss on the cheek or something, so I just wanted to share that with you now. I'm just telling Michael my experience. Now, he could get defensive hearing that. That doesn't necessarily mean he won't, but that would be a more appropriate way of sharing something that's going on.
Yeah. I think it's about communication and about good listening and about the ability to take it in and not fight it. Allow it to settle for a minute. The other thing is, we had talked about this with social media and other things, about the spontaneity of response. Sometimes you need to take a beat and just take it in and let it settle for a minute. I've been in situations, someone will say, why are you being silent? And I say, think about this for a second. It doesn't have to be like a tennis match. Just, it has to settle.
Very good point. So when someone is saying something to us, our partner in particular, that's what we're talking about, couples, and we have a visceral response, because we usually know something inside of us just tightens up and we're like, huh? Before, again, we open our mouth, like Michael said, take a beat, and then turn to your partner and try to understand, what are they really saying? I hurt their feelings. I know I wasn't doing that on purpose, but if that's what they're experiencing, let's find out, again, further information about it.
Right.
And then that really helps. Listening non-defensively really helps an openness, a flow of communication. Then I have to be right because he hurt me, and he has to be right because he didn't mean to.
Yeah. And again, I think trust is key.
Trust, yes. Your partner's not purposely trying to do this.
Well, you know what I mean? That your agendas are parallel and complementary to one another. You want to have a healthier, more open relationship.
There's something here called emotional maturity. I want to talk about this.
Please.
I think it's a very, very important subject, because I hate to say this, and I also will include myself in this comment, I'm not always emotionally mature. What do I mean by that? Emotional maturity is when you can be an adult person, a responsible person emotionally, meaning I'm not in my child, my on the playground, I'm going to fight you back child. That's how most people do experience fights. They're in their immature self. When we're emotionally mature, we can listen non-defensively. We can take in the other person's point of view. It's very hard to do. So again, it's something to strive for. But if I'm Sheryl, age 11, and Michael's 12, and I'm And he's, meh, meh. That's all that we're going to get. But we don't realize we've stepped into our emotionally immature body.
It's funny you said 12. I was thinking when I feel like the 10-year-old.
10-year-olds, okay.
Stamping my feet and, and being just sort of brittle and hard-edged and everything I don't like.
So when we're in our professional jobs, I think we have to be emotionally mature, else we'll get fired or, we'll cause our boss won't like it. Not that that is always true, but it's something to strive for. Emotional maturity, meaning I can be an adult, I can have an opinion, but another person can have an opinion, and we can talk about this in a responsible way.
And we're role modeling,
yes.
Adult, respectful, empathic behavior.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay. Number 7, I like this one. Each partner has a different point of view, so we have to be in tune. Now, having different points of view, it might not be obvious, again, like when we first fall in love, because we're in the infatuation stage. So I might do things and say yes to things because there are these beautiful chemicals going off in my brain that just make me so easy. Michael might say, let's go on the basketball court. You want to come shoot or watch me play basketball? Oh, of course, because I'm starting to fall in love with him. And then, do you want to come up? Nah, you go do it. I don't want to do that anymore. Something happens to us when we first fall in love. So we think we might have the same point of view, but we find out we don't.
I see it also, it's like symbiotic relationships.
Yes.
People who say, we're really connected to one another. That's a good thing. However, there are times when I feel like the two have merged into one. The two have merged into a third person, and you can't separate the two. And to me, that presents a whole set of problems. I mean, I like the notion of people are open enough and non-defensive enough to realize we are two separate individuals, and we will see the world, similar in many ways. That's what I think makes good relationships. But there are moments that'll come when we diverge, and that needs to be okay.
Yes, it's inevitable, isn't it?
And it's not a challenge. You know what I mean? It just is how we perceive the world, how we process things.
But again, what's so interesting when we talk about different points of view, it almost can set up a hostile environment, and it tends to do that quite a lot. And that is making it difficult to accept that just because we're a couple, sometimes you have to stay in the gray area, Michael, that maybe we won't ever agree on this conversation. And that doesn't mean our relationship is bad. That doesn't mean my partner is my enemy, which we tend to sometimes feel.
And also how we can sort of listen without judgment.
Yes.
That it is okay and probably a healthy thing to feel differently in the world about certain things. That's just how it is.
It is. And so we want to, again, be in tune with our partners, with our differences and what they are. But we have to identify those differences.
And even celebrate them.
Moving from the differences, we're going to talk about a very, very important subject: romance and sex or intimacy. Quite a big subject. We probably will have a whole podcast on this subject. So, romance and sex changes over time, obviously, from when we first meet. Like I said, have infatuation. And so it seems so easy for the male to be romantic and sex to be mind-blowing because of these endorphins that have been set off in us, and we love it and we wish it could last forever, but it doesn't.
I have described this. You have to be of a certain age to appreciate it.
Yes, I think I am.
Okay. But I used to say to people, when love finds Andy Hardy, all bets are off. people who are in love or lust in particular, in those early stages, their heads are out to lunch. You know what I mean? They're not thinking very straight about things. And, you're overwhelmed by the feeling. Now, there's nothing wrong with that feeling. That feeling is incredible. And you feel like you can do anything. And that's terrific. But at the same time, I think one has to understand, the notion of sex between people, romance. I mean, there's trust, there's intimacy issues, there's old wounds, there's being an adult as opposed to being a child in that kind of relationship. You know what I mean? It brings up all kinds of issues. It's not only about how is our sexual relationship, which, by the way, I think also reflects a lot of how the rest of one's relationship is, and romance, and about how complicated and difficult that can be.
Yes. And let's talk about it a little further. What happens when we decide to have a family and children come into the picture? What I see happens a lot is now we're not just husband and wife, we're parents. And the parents become the main relationship rather than we're husband and wife. And so what happens is the romance goes out and we start to get down to the
demands of adulthood, of parenthood.
Which is important. It's very important. But we need to balance that still with the concept of romance. It just has to change. And what I also have found is that as a couple, we need to schedule that in. As boring as that might sound, as drudgery that might sound, you got to do it, else it will not happen. Then too much time goes by.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was thinking the importance of stepping out of that role of parenthood and having a date night, or having just a night between the two of you, having a romantic weekend, because I think otherwise you start to really feel deprived and resentful. And it's like, wait, is being a parent giving up one's sexuality, sensuality, one's romantic attachments all to the child? And if that's the case, I think you start to really feel the loss.
You do feel the loss, and a lot of resentment starts to build between the male and the female. A little bit of the problem is that the mother, whether she works or she stays home, is going to do the major raising of the children and taking care of and setting schedules, etc. I'm not saying men do help. But kids look a lot to the mother. And so she kind of gets burnt out. Women, well, we get burnt out after a while. And so we might not have that energy or that what we need to be, quote unquote, that romantic partner to our husbands. So we have to take all the information in and balance it out so everybody can feel, yes, we still can have that committed, loving intimacy together. So it does, and it continues to take good communication about it and not to be afraid to say things.
Well, to say things what we need. And what we want.
Yes.
The other thing I think is about roles and role modeling.
Yes.
You described a situation, although I think it's changed over time, where men went out to work in the world and women, quote, worked at home. Believe me, that was a harder job in many ways. But I think as the workforce changed and everything, women left the house the way men left the house.
Yes.
But I think that there's sort of an expectation, which is men had more freedom in the sense they were out in the world. I remember when my kids were young and I was watching them and my wife was working, I couldn't wait for her to come home.
No, that's correct.
Take the kids, take the babies. I want to go out and work an 18-hour day in the peace and quiet of an office.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I think
it's very funny. It's true.
Yeah.
It's very true. There have been studies about that too, where the men think, oh yeah, taking care of the kids, no big deal. And then exactly what Michael said, come back, please, change places with me.
That's right.
Okay, so here's a really fun exercise I like to do with my couples about romance, putting it back in. This is really fun. So we have 2 jars. This is the Michael jar. This is the Sheryl jar. In my jar, I'm going to put in all the romantic activities I want to do. And then Michael's going to put all the romantic activities he likes to do. And then, of course, we have to schedule this, but he gets to pick from my jar. And then maybe he doesn't even tell me what we're going to do, because a little bit of not knowing really creates something. We like that. And then we go do what I want, so I feel satisfied. And then I pick from Michael's jar, and we go do what he wants to do. Because a lot of times men and women have very different concepts of romantic activities. Mm-hmm. But I like that. Everybody gets a say. Everybody gets a surprise. But we do have to schedule that to happen if we have children. So there are babysitters, parents, people who are willing to help you out. Take advantage. Don't forget about it. Else, like Michael said, resentment can build. Do you have some fun ideas, Michael?
I do.
Okay, let's hear.
This is a family podcast. Oh. But I love the idea, though, about picking other things. And,
yes.
There's sort of mystery. The other piece is, by the way, if one were to just sort of lay out the jar, the contents, and look at them, I think it comes back to what we had been talking about from the very beginning about the language of love, the book of love,
yes.
As you described it. It's like to really understand that other person. The other thing is you have to have the ability to fill that paper out without judgment.
Without judgment.
Going, this is really what I like, or this is really what I want, or I'm not sure if I want this, but I'm willing to try it, or are you willing? Whatever it is, it's sort of the mystery and the challenge of the situation.
Now, we can talk about sex. It's an important subject because, again, it can really slow down when it comes to having children. And sometimes this might not even be children. Two people are just working and are exhausted. It's very important not to judge your sexual relationship on how many times a week or a month sex is happening. Maybe there is some point in that. But really what's important is life is an ebb and flow, And so sometimes we got to look at, just because it may not be happening as much as we'd like, doesn't mean it's an indication there's not an attraction. So we can let go of it. But let's try to create a situation where sometimes it could just be intimacy, meaning it's not exactly sex, but we can lie in bed, we can talk, we can kiss, we can hold, we can whisper, we can share, and that can be still a connection.
Agreed.
It's very important. People tend to pigeonhole everything and put things in little boxes, and we want to stay open. Developmentally, couples, we go through different stages of relationship. We don't just stay in the same place. We get older. Women go through menopause. We have children. There's different things happening after that. So we just want romance to sex to be alive, to be interesting, but to be open to the change.
Well, and also I think it reflects communication.
Yes.
Things that we've been talking about. Trust. The ability to really listen to the other person, even if they're not talking. What is their body telling us?
Yes.
Are we present in the moment?
Yes.
And that is harder than it looks or than it sounds. And I think it's the same thing with sex and sexuality, so to speak.
Absolutely. It's a subject, like I said, we could talk about for a whole podcast. But just keep in mind all these things. So now we're heading into our last two of the 10 keys to successful relationships. And I want to talk about cooperation.
That is key to everything.
Isn't it?
I guess some of it is attitude. Some of it is really wanting to be in this relationship and wanting it to work. And you would think, well, that's obvious, but I don't think that that's always the case. I think people sabotage relationships. They're defensive, they're wounded. There are a lot of reasons and business that they bring to a relationship. And I think cooperation is really important to go the stretch, to be in it together.
It's so true. You're living together, you're having children together, you have to parent together. This idea of cooperation is we're a team. We're not against one another. And again, unfortunately, that's how a lot of couples end up feeling. So we want to turn toward each other and go, we're a team. We need to cooperate. And that cooperation will include everything we just have listed to get along and be a couple.
Yeah. We are in the soup together.
We are in the soup, and it makes such a big difference, especially with parenting. I do a lot of work with couples on setting up parenting plans for their children because they end up, again, having different ideas about how the child should be parenting. They have to learn how to cooperate and work together so the child has a united front and understands that these are the rules. Both parents are not undermining, one's not undermining the other. I'll go to daddy, I'll go to mommy because they'll let me do this. You work together and then talk to your children together about what the rules of the household are.
Don't, you've heard it often. People will say, okay, who's the disciplinarian in the couple? Who sets the rules? And kids know that.
Yes.
They know who to go to when. And I think parents really need to be in sync about this.
They do.
They don't have to agree about everything, but they just have to understand each other. They have to be willing to, as you say, cooperate with one another. They have the same end goals. They want kids to be healthy. They want them to be self-sufficient. They want them to go out in the world. And they want a relationship that thrives. That, to me, are what the end goals are.
Absolutely. And now we come to number 10. I think this one might be, I'm going to say, most important because we can't do any of the others unless we feel that we have the ability to change. Because if you're in a relationship and you think, I am never changing and everything is always going to stay the same, I think you better wake up. The ability to change is so important. It doesn't mean that we have to let go of who we are. We just have to become more of who we are.
And I think open to other possibilities, things we never considered, things we didn't really think about. Someone else's perspective helps us. And again, taking it in and considering it doesn't mean that we have to then act on it. We can just sort of think it through and go, you know what? Maybe not now, maybe some other time, or maybe it just doesn't work for me.
Yes.
And I will try and work around that. But I think without the ability to change, the rest is just...
Your relationship won't work, everyone. And change is a good thing. And that also means when we change, we learn more about the world. We educate ourselves. We try out different behaviors, different skills. We incorporate. Because again, I could go back to our profession. If we just said, I'm just going to stay right here and do this and not learn anything else and not change, you're not going to succeed in your professional life.
Let me ask you a
Sure.
question about this. I was just thinking about it as you were talking, which is, one would think and hope that most people and most couples really want to work through issues.
Yes.
Okay? Why is it we have a 50% divorce rate in the country?
Michael asked a good question, and I'm going to say a funny answer. Because you need to follow the 10 keys to successful relationships. And no one teaches us that, Michael. So we just kind of go on what we know and think we know everything about relationships. And unfortunately, it takes these 10 steps following. These are a lot of steps. They're difficult, but we can do it. And we can learn. And we can change. You got to want to change, not stay where you are. because that usually doesn't work. As the song says, everything must change.
I walked right into that one, didn't I?
That's good. All right. So thank you for joining us. This is Sheryl Aronson, licensed marriage family therapist on the road to your heart.
And this is Michael Berlin, enjoying and joining in the conversation. I loved it.
We are enjoying talking, and hopefully
Falling in love is the